Hello, I'm Mark Price. I'd like to talk to you today about love in abundance. There was a young girl who wrapped up a present for her father's birthday. Spent a lot of time wrapping it, putting good paper on it, a nice bow, gave it to her father. Father looked at it, opened it, and when he got inside, he was surprised. He said, "Sweetheart, this is a beautiful present. You spent a lot of time wrapping it, but there's nothing in it." Little girl looked up and said, "Oh, Daddy, you're wrong." He says, "I blew 100 kisses into that box." This was a young girl who gave her dad all her love, and she gave her father love in abundance. The reading today is from the Gospel of John, and it's chapter 12, verses 1 through 11. 6 days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. They gave a dinner for him there, and Martha served, while Lazarus was one of those reclining at table with him. Mary took a liter of costly perfumed oil made from genuine aromatic nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and dried them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. Then Judas the Iscariot, one of his disciples, and the one who would betray him, said, "Why was this oil not sold for 300 days' wages and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and held the money bag and used to steal the contributions. So Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Let her keep this for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." The large crowd of the Jews found out that he was there and came, not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. And the chief priests plotted to kill Lazarus too, because many of the Jews were turning away and believing in Jesus because of him. The word of the Lord. So today's story, a famous story, in fact it's in many Gospels. One way we know that a story is important is if it's told in multiple places in Scripture, and this one certainly is. And in this writing from John, we see Mary there taking a liter of anointed perfume worth 300 denarii. A denarii is a day's wages, so 300 days' wages, and she's pouring it onto the feet of Jesus, takes her hair and wipes the perfume into the feet of Jesus. And Judas goes nuts. He says, "Wait a minute." He says that's worth 300 denarii, 300 days' wages. It should be taken, sold, and the money given to the poor. And Jesus says, "No, we're not going to stop Mary. Mary is doing this for my burial, but she's also doing it with love in abundance. She is giving all of herself to me." You see, this is a story that's less about oil and less about wages. It's really a story of giving all of ourselves to each other, and Mary demonstrating all of herself to Jesus. Judas complaining, he really demonstrates himself to be a person who knows the cost of everything, but the value of nothing. You see, this is also a foreshadowing of what's to come in a few days, when Jesus is thrown down onto the ground, nailed to that cross. And as he extends his arms, he is saying, "I give all of my love to you. I give you the world. I give you individually my love, and I give it to you in abundance." One of the most important stories to me that came out of 9/11 was when there were people in the towers or on the plane, and they knew they were going to die. They saw no hope. They had one thing in common, two things. One is they reached out to whoever, whatever their God was. But the second thing is if they could get to a phone, they made phone calls. And many of them, like a woman in one of the towers, called her loved ones. And in this case, she called her sister. A sister she had not spoken to for 40 years. Why is it that sometimes it takes being in a place where nothing else matters before we realize what truly and really does matter? So she and her sister are on the phone, and all they could do is cry. All they could do is say, I'm sorry. All they could do is say, please, please, please forgive me. Neither of them could remember why they stopped talking to each other. All they could do was say, I love you, please forgive me. This is what we're called to do. And maybe especially now as we begin this holiest of holy weeks, is remember that we are called by God to love one another fully and completely. We cannot allow this pandemic to keep us from loving. The world has told us that we're not to connect. God has told us we should never stop loving. So we should look at each other, whether we're in connection with them or whether they are at a distance from us, and figure out ways to love each other fully and completely. What we should be doing is giving each other boxes, and we have to determine, are we giving them empty boxes or are we giving them boxes filled with kisses? This is Mark Price. Thanks for listening.